Let's take a look at what is in the payroll folder. And the payroll folder is empty for June week 3. So the last folder in June week 3 is statements. We're taking a look, and we have the credit card statement. Here is the Triangle MCard credit card statement. We can see that it is, statement date is June 16th. And before I go ahead and reconcile, obviously, I need to go ahead and clear that bank feed. We're going to clear the bank feed first for the credit card, but before I reconcile the credit card, I'm actually going to clear all of the bank feeds. I like to clear all of the bank feeds to at least June 16th before I reconcile the credit card for June 16th. The reason for this is I might put a payment over once on the credit card feed, reconcile the credit card, go to the bank feed, see a credit card payment that I'm assuming is Triangle, and then add it to the same period after it's been reconciled, which we'll catch, when we do the next reconciliation. But I do like to clear off all of the bank feeds before I do any of the reconciliations. So let's go ahead and begin clearing those bank feeds. We're going to go to Transactions, Bank Transactions, and let's start with the Triangle MasterCard. So as a reminder, the first 4 columns, those are from the credit card company. So this is all what's coming from the credit card company, and then everything to the right of the paperclip, including the paperclip, is all QuickBooks. And if this is toggled to categorize, it means we're going to put in whatever is queued up for us here. And if this is toggled to match, we're going to marry this bank feed info line to the pre-existing QBO transaction that we already have entered. And the action option is also different. So categorize toggle, you'll see a post. Match toggle, you'll see a match. So the first one, we have created a rule already called interest expense. We can see it's teed it up, 0 rated, Triangle MCard. So this post is going to add the QBO transaction in as we've queued it up here. And then it's going to marry the bank feed info line to that QBO transaction and mark it as cleared. It does all of that with a click of a button. I love bank feeds when you use them correctly. And then when I go ahead and match to existing entries, I try not to get click happy. I fight the urge to go matchy, matchy, matchy. And to fight the urge, I look at June 19th, June 19th, Canadian Tire, match. So those are the 2 things that I sort of look at. June 19th, June 19th. McGroots, match. June 21st, Canadian Tire, match. And stand corrected, no, June 21st, sorry. June 21st, stand corrected, match. So I go a little slower, but it's because sometimes it suggests things that are not a match, what I call they're not soulmates. Now that we've cleared the Triangle MasterCard, after doing the credit cards, I actually suggest to then go to the smaller accounts, doing the operating account last. So in this case, the Canada Bank Savings. And I'm going to illustrate now why I suggest that by instead first starting with the Canada Bank Checking, the operating account. And I'm going to do it backwards this time. And when we get to the savings transfer, you'll see exactly why I suggest to do the savings accounts usually before the checking account. But in this tutorial, let's go ahead and jump now to the Canada Bank checking account and begin clearing the bank feed items there. Here is the Canada Bank bank feed. We can see that there's some suggested matches and some suggested categorizations. And we'll get to that in a moment. I'm going to flip over first to posted because I want you to see all of these Moneris deposits for this 3rd week of June that have gone in without us even seeing them, right? We didn't see them at all. That is the danger of auto add rules is you don't even get to see them. And if you've set up a rule slightly not necessarily wrong, but cast the net too big, if you will. You might categorize things you don't intend to. Or if you say, oh, anything that says bank fees, just put over to bank fees, and then there's like a $200 bank fees for some weird reason, you want to see that, right? So this is why we don't automatically have rules sort of auto go in. But look at how many Moneris ones there are. There's 3 or 4 a day, one for the debit, one for the MasterCard, and one for the Visa, sometimes one for Amex, sometimes one for Discover, and every single day. And so because of that, it's actually easier to have this one type of bank fee rule automatically happen. So let me show you though how you can still use the rules to tee up and to bulk enter a bunch, right? So I'm going to go over to pending. And in this example, there's only one rule that's teed up. So let's go over to posted. I'm just to illustrate this point, and I'll illustrate it again in a week that has a few more rules. But let's look for, here's another rule that was teed up for the $1.50 intract transfer. I'm just going to undo that. That was from last week. By undoing it, I'm undoing everything that we did with the bank feed. So in this case, the bank feed rule had categorized it and matched it and marked it as cleared. So it deleted that entry that it created from the bank feed. And now it's back over on the pending screen. So we can see here's the one that I just undid. It's ready to be recategorized. And down here is the other bank fee charge. So one method to be able to visually see all the rules teed up, but put them all over at once, is to use this filter option right here that says, show me all of the rules. So in this case, it's just 1 week. There's just 2, but you can imagine if there's a whole month's worth. And now we can visually scroll through the list and see $1.50, $1.50, right? I'm like happy with all of that. And catch the random ones that we don't want. And once you visually see that, okay, I'm okay with all of these, you can then click this little button right here, select all of the rules that you've looked at, or unselect the ones that you don't want in that one moment, and you can bulk post them all over like that. So setting up the rules to be teed up, but not auto adding, still can really speed up the process because you can bulk add the rules, but seeing them instead of them just flipping over without you actually seeing like what the amount is or anything like that. So you can see how like the QBO bank feed is actually really powerful, really helpful once you really get comfortable with it and understand what it's doing. Let's continue with clearing the bank feed. As a reminder, we're looking at the date, comparing with the date of what it suggests to match to, and also the name if there is a name. So this is a deposit, that's a branch deposit. I'm going to go ahead and hit match. Another thing that you could do if you, because usually I match what I know and then come back to what I don't. Another option you could do is just only show me the suggested matches, and you can then filter just for those. But I actually find that context helps. Right? So sometimes there's a transaction before and after, like maybe an NSF bounce or something like that, that helps me sort of see what's going on a bit more. But I thought I'd let you know that that's an option. I don't use it. So for example, we're going to skip this one for now. We're going to go back to the ones that aren't suggested matches, and we're just going to do the suggested matches. So again, hovering over, you see more of the bank description. So this is an online payment to MCard. We have a payment entered as an expense, but it still works. And so we're going to go ahead and match. Again, I should have looked at the date, sorry. So hovering over, that's an online payment on June 16th. So this is June 15th. It's a day off, so it took a day. You know, realistically, that makes sense to me. Ontario Power. So we're going to go ahead and hit match. Here's one, a transfer that it wants to match to James Rogers' check. So we wrote a check to James Rogers to purchase that float trailer. And I was kind of hoping that the new QBO AI bank feed was smart enough to know 2 things. I wanted it to, first of all, be smart enough to know, right, that this is a check and this is transfer. Like, it's probably not the same thing, except you just noticed that I entered that credit card payment to Triangle MCard as an expense. So I'm in my head, I'm like, okay, well, legitimately, right, a check, whether we put it in as a check entry or an expense entry, because you can pay your credit card by check, that's a thing. I can see why it would maybe think that, but it's not looking at the description here. It's not looking at what's going on inside. Like, why would something that said transfer be a check for an asset purchase? So obviously I'm expecting way too much for AI. In fact, when I look at the little AI, why you thought this clicker, it says, well, it found one expense for $1,000 between March and July. And I'm like, why? It says transfer. Like, maybe make that window a bit smaller. I can't see how this is any different than the classic bank feed that it used to have. Like, it just isn't AIing enough for me. But now it does lead me to another, shall I say, disappointment of this new AI bank feed. And also the reason that I say start with the credit card and the smaller accounts before the operating accounts. This is a key moment in the training. Because if there wasn't this $1,000 check confusing it, instead of trying, like, the first thing it does is it looks around and it's like, okay, is there an existing QBO entry for $1,000, exactly this amount, in or around this day? That's the first thing it does. And once it finds something, then it stops. It doesn't look any further. It just offers up, well, whatever it finds, it offers up the list of all the things for $1,000 in and around that day for this GL account. And then it stops. After it's offered its matches, it stops. But a few years ago, maybe a couple of years ago, I noticed that because so many people double entered their transfers, it added a new thing to their classic bank feed called pair. And this pair, if it can't see an existing QBO entry, it then looks, before suggesting a category, it then looks to see on the other bank feeds, is there a matching amount in and around this day? And you can see the bank feed here stopped when it saw the check. But if we now go over to the Canada Bank Savings bank feed, now we can see that pair suggestion. Because what the bank feed did here is it first looked to see, is there anything entered as a QBO transaction for $1,000 that this could be? No, because the $1,000 we have is out of checking, not savings. And then it thought, is there anything already entered into QBO as a transaction that would increase this GL account by 1,000? It looks around and goes, no. So then it doesn't stop at offered up matches. It goes to its next step, which is, is there any other bank feed info line that this could be related to on or around this day? And we can see right here that pair is what it came up with. Now, it doesn't have the little AI stars. I'm going to refresh to see if the little AI stars show up, because the AI stars are kind of like showing you the thinking of the AI. Interesting. So it's not showing me the AI stars. This is doing like the classic bank feed look for a pairing, which I kind of liked. Because the double entered transfer is a real issue, and I'm sure that Intuit had to deal with it a lot, and that's why they created this new pairing option in order to sort of reduce that. But because they have this pairing option, if people get too reliant on it, right, when they're over here and they see this 1,000 suggested match, because it's not suggesting a pair, a human user might not even consider that there's a pair to be matched to. This is why I say start first with the smaller accounts and then move to the bigger accounts. So here's another disappointment that I have with the new QBO AI bank feed, is that it's not doing anything actually more in this case that it would have done with the classic bank feed. Like, it's not taking that extra step. It's not saying, okay, there is an existing QBO transaction, but also there's this other option. I would have liked it to sort of say there's two possible things could happen here. And I can understand why that would be extremely difficult to do from a programming perspective, right? It's either looking for a match, and if it can't find it, then goes to that next step to do the categorization suggestions, which includes looking at the other bank feeds. But this is a new AI bank feed. Like, couldn't it have looked at the fact that it says transfer and understood that this is maybe a transfer, maybe look to see the other bank feeds first. But again, I'm just expecting a little too much from AI. And I just think that's part of the problem, right? We're just expecting AI to do things, and when it doesn't, it can really lead us astray. Wouldn't it be great if I actually flipped this over to categorize, and then at that point, it started to look to see if there was another bank feed who has a transfer to suggest for me. So if I toggle this over to categorize, that indeed is not what happens. In fact, when I click on the little stars to see what it's thinking, it says no similar transactions were found in your books. Like, that's what the old bank feed would do. Like, why is this any more than the old bank feed? So let's expand this, see if it says any more for us. And it does. It says the transaction memo transfer suggests a bank transfer. Okay. Which typically incurs bank charges. So let's put the $1,000 to bank charges. Like, no. The memo says transfer. Instead of suggesting bank charges, can you please suggest, instead of transaction type expense, can't you suggest transaction type transfer? Again, just seeing the limitations and knowing that people are going to rely on it a little bit more because it's AI, it's kind of showing this messy middle for me that I'm not really liking. So we actually have two options right now to do with this, and I am going to show you both of them. I want you to see what both of them look like, okay? The first option we have is to make this a transfer to Canada Bank Savings. And so now what I'm doing is I'm posting this. I'm using the bank feed shortcut way to enter a big screen QBO transaction entry. Okay. And then what I can do is I can go over to Canada Bank Savings, and you can see now instead of suggesting a pair, it's suggesting to marry the bank feed info line to the QBO transaction that we just entered already. So then I would just simply hit match. And then what that's going to do is, again, just to show you what that looks like, here's that transfer that we just put in the shortcut way. It's only married right now to the Canada Bank checking. And then if I hit match right here and we go back to it, now you can see it's married to both. Okay, so you see that there was 2 clicks. I had to add the transfer over from the checking side, and then I matched on the savings side to the existing transfer. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete what I just did. I'm just going to say delete this transfer. So it's going to put everything back to the way it was. Notice the timing issue. It's not seeing the pairing. So this is an example of how maybe a transfer can get double entered just because of that timing issue. So I'm going to refresh my screen. And we can see now the pair option is back. Let's go to Canada Bank Checking. You can see it's back to how it was. It wants to match it. It says transfer 1,000. Over on the savings, it suggests a pair. I'm going to go ahead and post. Because it saw that pair, coming back over to the Canada Bank checking, that $1,000 is now gone. That's why I say start with the credit card, go to the smaller savings accounts, and then end with the operating account. There's less clicking, it's quicker, it's more accurate. And if we go to that transfer, you can see what it's done is it's gone ahead and it has entered 1 transfer and done 2 marrying all with 1 click. So that's what the pair option is all about. So moving on to the rest of the Canada Bank checking bank feed clearing. And again, just doing the ones that it's suggesting matches for. June 19th, we have a bill payment dated June 19th. I called it e-transfer. This is an e-transfer. Sometimes you can see and confirm the bank info when you hover and it says that it's maybe 2 rows. Sometimes it doesn't. So that's why the e-transfer here helps. Hit match. And here's check 20, and we called it bill payment 20. Now, it cleared the bank June 20th. We wrote the check June 15th. That makes sense. It took a few days to clear, no problem. So we're going to go ahead and hit match. And now we are left with the 2 lonely singles on the bank feed for us to solve. So the first one up here says commercial. And if you hover over it, what the actual bank description says is commercial taxes EMPBD. Now I've seen what EMPBD means. I wonder if you have any ideas of what that might mean. Looking over here, we can see that AI is suggesting that based on the full description, it might be a CRA payment. So it's got that right. It is a CRA. So if you have a feeling that this might be CRA, what can you do to try and figure this out? Well, you can go on to, if you have access to the CRA My Business account or Rep a Client, you can go on there and you can see what payments on or around the 16th, check all the different accounts and see what payments might have been paid. Now, you might already have an idea of what this might be. If you're using the payroll tracker and populating it with the payroll information, if we go over to the monthly source deductions, there is that $739.83. So this $739.83 on the bank feed is actually the payroll tax payment. So looking at the AI suggestion, again, the AI's just not got it quite right? AI is saying that it thinks that this should be taxes and licenses, which if we're paying payroll taxes, in fact, if we're paying CRA tax at all, it's probably on the balance sheet. So I feel like part of the limitation here is it wants to post it to an expense. So it's suggesting the wrong thing. But here's something else I want you to know. If you're using the tax modules in QuickBooks Online, so either the payroll tax module or the sales tax modules, you cannot use the bank feed to put those entries in. You cannot use the shortcut way to put in things in the big screen way if you're using either the payroll tax module or the sales tax module. So here's an illustration of what I mean. As a bookkeeper, you would be like, that's not taxes and licenses. I know that this is payroll taxes payable, right? You know that that's the one that you want to now decrease. And then you're like, yep, payroll taxes payable, exempt CRA, and you feel done. Let's go ahead and hit post. So we feel like we've put it in the right category. But if we go over now to the payroll tax module, you'll see that QuickBooks still thinks that this is payable. So if we were to go ahead and pay and file right now and enter this in as paid by the checking account, it would add another QBO transaction entry. So you know what? The way around this is to instead drop this down. Don't do this. This isn't the way to do it. I'm just saying if you're cleaning stuff up, you can just mark this as paid just to get it off this action screen. And then you can say, no, I don't want this recorded in my books because we've already recorded it. But that's kind of like not the way to do it. Okay, let me show you the correct way to do it. So let's go over to transactions. We're going to go to the posted. We're going to go down to the, where is it? There it is, this payment. We're going to undo what we did. So just a reminder that the undo undoes whatever you did on the bank feed screen. So if you only matched to a QBO transaction, it'll unmatch it. But if you entered a QBO transaction and matched, then it will undo both of those. So we're going to go undo. So it's deleted that payroll tax transaction that I just put in, and it's now offering it up again. And so instead, I'm going to go over to payroll tax, and here is where I can actually enter the transaction. Now it does say pay and file. Not sure I love the wording on that because we don't necessarily file our payroll tax payments. I mean, we just say what month it's for and how many employees we had and what our earnings were. So I guess that's what it's referring to. And it says pay and file because you actually can link your business bank account to this payroll screen, and you can actually have it send the payment to CRA for you. But you have to say to do it. It doesn't do it automatically. I've never done that before myself. I just know that it's an option. And pay and file doesn't necessarily do that even if you do have the bank connected. So that's something extra to look into if you're going to use QBO Payroll. So if we look here, we can see that it is showing the breakdown of what the payment entails. And what I like is it does give us a quick access to the PD7A. The PD7A is like the old school payment form that we used to have to fill in before there was like even online banking. So this is a vestige from an older era. But it is helpful because when we do pay CRA online, either through our online banking or through CRA My Payment, it does ask for the gross payroll and the number of employees. So these two boxes are what you need. So I do like that it does have the PD7A at quick access there. And you can print the check, because that's, again, an old school thing. You can say that it's coming out of the checking account, and you can say that it was paid on June 16th. This, if I said pay and file, because I don't have the bank connected and because I'm not setting this up to actually pay, so again, I'm not, I don't have experience with that, but this is not going to file. All it's going to do is enter the QBO transaction. And again, that's because I don't have the payments sort of set up with QuickBooks connected to my bank. So there's extra steps to learn there. So let's go ahead and hit pay and file. It's going to put that transaction in and we're going to say done. So here's the next one that's going to be due next month. And I'm just going to drop this down and note that you can just mark it as paid. So if we just mark it as paid, it's not going to put a QBO transaction in. It's just going to clear off the action needed. This is if you're doing a bit of cleanup, if people have actually entered in that payment through the bank feed. But also, you can enter the actual transaction this way as well. So if you're a little worried that the bank online banking is attached to QBO and you don't want to make another payment because you're not quite sure if QuickBooks is going to do what you anticipate it's going to do, you can use this to mark as paid and say, yes, I want this payment synced with my QuickBooks account. Yes, I want this transaction to go in. And then you just answer the same questions. It doesn't show you the PD7A or anything like that, but then you can say the date you've paid, the account you paid out from as well, and it will do the same thing. So let's go over to transactions. And now we can see that it's offering up that tax payment that we made. And we can just go ahead and click match. And now we are left with one more lonely single. It is a MISC Payment VSA DEP. And we can see this number here. Now, I remember what this number is in relation to, but if you see a number, that could be a clue to something that might have happened in the past. So let's put that number in here, 0268745, and let's go over to posted. Now it's going to search everything with that number in, and it gives us a clue. Look at all of these things. Let me expand out, let me show the bank description fully. And you can see that that number exists with all of the Moneris related deposits. So there's our clue. We know that this is related to a Moneris thing. Now, we've already set rules for payments to Moneris, for the Visa fees and the debit fees and the MasterCard fees, so on and so forth. And we've noticed that those actually happen at the end of the month, or maybe the first of the month, not in the middle of the month. This is part of what I mean by people can get really click happy. So when you get click happy and you think, oh, well, sent to Moneris, this is obviously Moneris fees, click, moving on. Right? When you get click happy, sometimes you stop thinking sort of critically or analytically. I also wonder if that's a benefit too of being an experienced or long-term bookkeeper is because everything else is very I know what this is. When you get to something that you don't know what it is, you push a little further to think more critically about it, right? So thinking that way, why would there be a Moneris Visa fee in the middle of the month when I'm used to seeing them at the beginning of the month? And also, why would it say DEP? DEP is deposit. So the answer to the question is that this is actually that day there was a refund given to a customer greater than all of the amounts paid that day by Visa. Right? So it puts the net in. So let's say there was a payment from a customer for $100 from Visa and then a refund given for $20 by Visa. Well, we'd see an $80 deposit into our bank account for Moneris that day for Visa. But in this case, it was the other way around. There was a refund given by Visa that was greater than the payments received by Visa for that day. So this really is the Moneris quote unquote deposit. It just is a negative deposit because there was a refund given. So if this does go in as a Visa fee, it'll actually kind of mess up or make difficult our POS reconciliation at the end of the month. So when we do our POS reconciliation at the end of the month, I'll probably address this item again, sort of show how we would troubleshoot or find out what the issue is. But let me show you right now how to put this in correctly. Interesting that AI actually wants to make this POS clearing. So that makes me happy because it really is POS clearing, because it is part of the deposits and refunds that are going in with the POS, point of sale, debit credit card machine. It is out of scope, and I'm just going to add Moneris because I think it's nice to have names on all of the transactions when possible. And if we wanted to, we could drop this down and actually create rule. So let's call this Moneris deposit Visa with refund. I don't know if it'll let me do brackets. Let's see. And yeah, I like that the description says that. Don't replace the bank memo. Like, it might change it a little bit in the future. I like to have all of the right crumbs in there. And you know what? Maybe we can actually auto add this one because it is part of the Moneris deposits. And we're going to go ahead and hit save, and then it'll go ahead and automatically put it in for us. So now that we've cleared the MasterCard feed, the bank account feeds, now we can go and see and take a look at the MasterCard statement that we have in the statement folder for June week number 3. Here we can see that it covers the period from May to June 16th. We've got our opening 4/11 and we've got our closing 30/50/51. So let's go ahead and reconcile this together in QuickBooks. We're going to go to Reconcile, and you can also find that Reconcile into Transactions Reconcile right here. We're going to make sure that Triangle MasterCard is selected and that beginning balance of 411.76. That is right here. So 411.76, and then the closing balance or your new balance is 30/50/51. So let's go ahead and put that in. 30/50/51. And then the statement ending date, as per the statement here, is June 16th. So we'll put June 16th in there. So 06/16/25. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and start reconciling. So we don't have that happy zero yet, even though the statement here says that it's from May 17th to June 16th. When we look at the transactions here, there is a transaction date of May 16th that didn't post to the credit card until May 17th. And right here, that's where we can see that this item here, the bank feed has noted it as June 16th, but it didn't make it onto the statement until the 17th. So that's just something to be aware of. There is sometimes these timing issues with the credit card statements. As we scroll down, we can see that there's no uncleared items and everything seems cleared and happy to the bank feed. So what could this difference be? So one of the first things I usually do when my bank reconciliation looks okay, but the difference is there, is I just check my info. I make sure I've got the right date, as specifically I've made no typo on the statement ending balance. And another thing I've noticed is if the statement ending balance is in a credit position, like if somebody overpays their credit card, that's an issue I usually have with myself if I forget to put the minus there, if there's a balance, sort of a negative balance on the credit card. But with credit card reconciliations, though, checking this information I've entered actually isn't my first step when I see a difference. Because remember how this 16th on the credit card feed is noted as the 16th, but we didn't see it until the 17th on the statement? That happens quite often, especially at the end of the statement. So if we scroll down to the bottom, This one's fairly obvious. There's only one here, and it's 27902, and that's the difference. But usually there's a combination of 2 or 3, and it's not usually in any particular order except for being the last day or two of the statement. So what you want to do is you want to pull over that statement, and you want to say, okay, so 2260, that's there. 1889, that's there. That 1898 isn't here, but that's because it's in the interest charge section. Fine, down here. So you can sort of knock off which ones are on the statement, and now we can see, oh, this 27902 isn't actually on the statement. So a lot of times, if you're getting stuck with the reconciliation, going line by line at the end of the credit card statement, that is going to usually reveal what your issue is. Now, if it really doesn't seem to work out, you're going to have to do it the old school way, which is unselecting everything and just going by what the statement says, right? Find the 500, clear the 500. 466, clear the 466. And another way of looking for things if this list is super long is you can go Control F, and now this is Chrome's looking up on the screen, and you can say like 92.99, where's that? And it'll highlight it for you. Also, see how the difference is 27902? Another way to sort of try and solve things is you can Control F and try and find 27902. See how it's found 2 of them? And there's one down there. That only works if it's one transaction though, not if it's a combination. Same idea is to look here. So 27902, this is now searching QuickBooks. And again, it's only going to be showing you if that difference is related to one transaction. But those are a few of the troubleshooting things I do when the difference isn't 0. This one's pretty straightforward for me though. I just needed to scroll down to the bottom, say, oh, this one, it's not on this statement. It's probably going to show up on next statement. And by unclicking it, remember this blue circle is not whether it's cleared the bank or not. This blue little check mark is this number on the statement? That's what the blue check mark is about. And you can see the 279 is not on the statement. Therefore, unclicking it is going to help resolve that difference. There we go. We have finished reconciling the Triangle MasterCard for this 3rd week of June. And often I do go ahead and attach the statement to the reconciliation, so it's there for reference purposes. And we can simply just drag it over, wait, and then say done. And with that, June week number 3 is done. Now, June is chock full of learning moments, so I hope you'll join me for June week number 4. We'll be tackling a capital lease, a payroll raise, advance, and reimbursement, and much more. I hope you found this video helpful in the building, growth, and success of the business you are working in and on. If you are interested in downloading the case study source documents or have any special requests for topics you'd like me to cover in upcoming weeks, you can find out more information in the link below. If you found this video useful, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Instagram at BeThatBusiness, and you can tweet at me, X at me, I'm at NiftyNomi, and I'm also at NiftyNomi on Twitch and TikTok. And you can find resources and courses about running a Canadian business on my website, naomiwilkins.ca. I love making business make sense. The video today was recorded in beautiful Oshawa, Ontario. Thanks so much for watching, and get out there and be that business that thrives.